Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby, coming to you live from the Seaport District in Lower Manhattan, specifically Pier 17, and brought to you by Chase. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen Rose, sometimes everything goes smooth on the internet. Sometimes it gets socially awkward. Now this I found really interesting, and I need your insight on Mr. Rose. Taj Gibson was out for personal reasons. I have no idea what happened in his personal life. He could have been suffering some tragedy. I'm not saying that there was not legitimate reasons to be out of the basketball game, but I am saying this. While he was out, he was active on Instagram. Not only was he active on Instagram, he was liking some comments that were very interesting. Look at this second one down there at the bottom. This is embarrassing. If they don't find a way to pull this out, Tibbs should be fired right after the game, liked by Taj Gibson. If you see a comment, we've both been on Instagram, Jalen Rose. If you see a comment, it's difficult to like that comment accidentally because the heart is all the way over there to the right. You're already scrolling in the comments, and you're going to like one that suggests that Coach Thibodeau should be fired. You're former coach of the Bulls who brought you to the Wolves. Am I reading too much into this, or is there more to this, Mr. Rose?
And you know Taj Gibson is a friend of our program. You represent fourth grade to the fullest when his name comes up. And so I'm not surprised that you were able to catch this. But when you like something, you don't care who sees it clearly, because you would think that he and Tibbs had a solid relationship based on how the Bulls situation went, and Taj became a player under him, found his niche. Before you know it, he was playing quality minutes, sometimes getting double-doubles, like a rough and rugged rotation player that when Tibbs wanted to create a culture in Minnesota, it was like, I'm going to bring Taj, I'm going to bring Jimmy, I'm going to bring D. Rose, guys that I know that's going to play hard and give me effort and give me toughness. So for that relationship now to clearly be fractured, especially when you look at the point that says he should be fired after the game, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And now that it's on wax, look for him probably to be getting moved between now and the trade deadline. And I'm pretty sure he'd be happy about it based on how he responded to that post.
So I'm glad you talked about what happens next, because there's a few things. I've liked some Instagram posts by accident. I've liked some comments by accident. You see the big heart come up and then I unlike it. That's usually how that goes. But Jalen, now that this is out, and I found this on Reddit, and now that this is, staff found it there, but now that this is out, now that this is out in the open, this is going to go one of two ways. Number one, he immediately says it was an accident and that he didn't mean to, and he walks the whole thing back whether he meant to or not. Or number two, he doesn't say anything, and he just lets it sit there, and he just lets it kind of stink, and the next thing you know, he's no longer in a Timberwolves jersey. I thought the Timberwolves drama was kind of over when Jimmy Butler left. Do you think that there's still more to this story? Do you think we'll hear more from Minnesota about how not everyone's happy that's wearing the uniform?
Clearly, and starting with Taj, as you just mentioned. And so it's one thing to feel like that silently or privately. When you do it on social media, it now becomes something for public consumption, which means Tibbs and or the organization will pull him aside and or his agent. They're going to talk about it. And before you know it, it's going to be broken news to those that follow this show. He's going to get traded or bought out. And before you know it, he's going to be running with another squad. Possibly even, say, the Sixers. Stay tuned.
Well, the Sixers are in an interesting spot, and we've chronicled Markelle Fultz pretty much ever since he came in the league, and he's becoming a very sympathetic figure. I mean, obviously he's dealing with this current injury, no matter how real that is or how physical and how mental that is. He's dealing with it, and he's rehabbing it right now, trying to get back on the court. But the Washington Post did a very deep dive into the people around him, into his life, and exactly what that's like. And I'm going to say this on wax. As a parent, and Jalen, I know you're a parent, I do not criticize how other people parent their children. Whatever happens in your own home, however you decide to deal with your children, as long as you're not causing them serious physical or emotional harm, do your own thing. Whatever works for you, I get it. But this is an interesting nugget that was reported by the Washington Post. The Washington Post wrote in this column, quote, during Fultz's first season in Philadelphia, Ebony, Fultz's mother, had cameras installed inside his New Jersey home, according to several people familiar with the setup, who described the indoor surveillance as unusual. The cameras have since been removed. Multiple people said Ebony had asked some who had dealt with Fultz to sign non-disclosure agreements for reasons that are unclear to them. That was written by Candace Buckner of the Washington Post. Jalen Rose, this is a little peculiar, isn't it? Surveillance cameras inside the home?
Well, it's clear why somebody wants you to sign a non-disclosure agreement so that whatever you see here, you don't get a chance to discuss. So that part, for me, is pretty cut and dry. The installing of the cameras for indoor vision, for indoor surveillance, it does seem a little bit unusual, but at the same time, people do have cameras in their homes, outside of their homes, in their vehicles. You jump in and out of Uber cars. Some of them have cameras inside the car for their own protection, for their own safety. But again, it's hard for me to truly comment on why she did that because we don't know what was taking place in the house that made her feel like she needed to do that.
We had a nanny cam in the twins' room for a while to see what they're doing while they're sleeping, whether they're up or not, if they're jumping out the crib or whatever. And sometimes you would get this notification on your phone and you would look at it, and there's a creepy feeling about it. Like there's something that just doesn't, you know when something feels right in your stomach. When I was watching other people in my house interact and I was listening to them, it made me feel a little uncomfortable. And I just can't imagine why someone would have that level of surveillance inside their own child's home. But as you mentioned, who knows why? We don't have all the details, but I know I'm not criticizing her parenting. I'm just saying it seems a little peculiar. I know that when you came out of the league and you had that home in Denver, there were no security cameras in there because Lord knows what they would have found if there was. Moving on, Jalen Rose.
Absolutely. And while I was in Denver, I probably would have benefited if my mother did put some indoor cameras in the crib.
Shout out to Jeannie Rose. Moving on, there's a long feature on ESPN.com by Ian O'Connor about James Dolan, JD and the Straight Shots own, and also owner of the Knicks, James Dolan. And the headline and one of the polls from this is, oh, James Dolan he's not ruling out selling the Knicks. Like, oh, he's open to selling the Knicks. But if you actually read it, which I rarely do, it's not exactly that cut and dry. Here's what the part they won't pull out says, and it's from Dolan, quote, I can tell you that nobody in my family wants to sell the Knicks and Rangers. It's not just my dad, it's the whole family. It's my 5 brothers and sisters. They like being owners. And they just have no appetite for running the team. That's a different animal. I don't have any appetite for running the team, either of them. That's not my expertise. Jalen Rose, do you think James Dolan and the Dolan family will ever sell the Knicks? And if they did, or even if they were rumored to be open to, do you think that could help them land free agents?
Never sell the team. It's a family business. It's an enterprise that is going to go on for decades and decades to come. Even if you can get $5 billion for the team now, the real estate in New York City continues to climb. The value of that team where it plays, both of them, is going to continue to skyrocket. For those that have ever been on the East Coast or purchased property or rent or lease, you know, in New York City, you can spend $2 million and have a 1-bedroom and 1 bath and be in 900 square feet. So for him to own that, to go with the garden, oh man, never sell that.
Do you think James Dolan's involvement with this franchise can keep big-name free agents like, I don't know, Kevin Durant, Kemba Walker from coming to the New York Knicks?
I don't think so, because he said something very distinct in those quotes that wasn't always the case. When he admitted that he don't have the appetite for running the team and that's not his expertise. That's not something necessarily he would have said years ago.
Well, Jalen, not only did the Packers lose over the weekend, but some former Packers had some very critical things to say about, one, Aaron Rodgers. We'll break it all down right after this.